what we're going to do is Cleveland is faced with several immediate things. The administrative side, now that the criminal side of the Tamir Rice case is over with, we're tasked with administrative review of what happened that day, and to determine if there's any disciplinary actions we will take in regards to the officers involved, as well as the call taker and dispatcher. But we also have coming up pretty soon decisions that will be made in regards to the 13 officers who were involved in the East Cleveland shooting. And so what we'll do is I'll have my safety director talk to you about where we are in regards to that, and the chief can talk to you about where we are in the process of and how we will handle the administrative side of Tamir Rice case. And then I'll have Blaine Griffin, my director of community relations, will talk about how we're engaging the community as a whole in this, and then we'll open it up for questions, okay? All right. Director.
Good morning, everyone.
You probably need to come up here.
In 2012, when we had the East Cleveland incident, when it was completed, we started an administrative review with the Critical Incident Review Committee. Now that review covered all the officers that touched the pursuit, with the exception of the 13 officers that were involved in the shooting. We did not do an administrative review of those officers because there was a pending criminal investigation. That investigation completed with the reload decision on June 12th of this year. Once that decision was completed, Chief Williams reactivated or re-engaged with the administrative review of those 13 officers. That was completed in September, mid-September of this year, and that file was sent to my office, and we started a review. We did a review of everything that was done relative to the shooting in East Cleveland, that tragedy that took place once again in 2012. Once we did our review, then we had disciplinary hearings on all 13 officers. At this point today, the disciplinary hearings for all 13 officers are completed. The BCI investigation, all the logistical stuff relative to forensics, etc., has been completed. We're now in the process of putting together our presentation and our recommendations to the mayor relative to charges concerning those 13 officers that were involved in the East Cleveland shooting. So that's where we are today with that one. Everything is completed, all the reviews of all the videos, of the interviews, all the forensic information that was provided to us by BCI, the sheriff's investigation, East Cleveland's investigation, and also our administrative investigation. All that is completed. We're putting it together to present it to the mayor sometime in mid-January.
Now, just to add a little more onto that, as the director mentioned, the latest review, administrative review, is on 13 officers who were involved in shooting. There were over 60 officers who there were administrative hearings and disciplinary actions taken against and involved in that shooting that were not part of, they didn't actually fire the weapon, but they were part of the chase. And in that, there were terminations, demotions, suspension without pay for periods of time. That has occurred. Now, this is involving the 13 officers involved in the shooting itself. And as the director said, he'll bring those recommendations to me in somewhere mid-January. Chief Williams, can you explain to them where we are with administrative?
Sit down, please, Chief. Thanks.
I need to be in the middle?
Yeah.
Slide over. Okay.
Thank you.
The same process that the director talked about with the Critical Incident Review Committee will commence with the Tamir Rice incident. That committee has been reformed, and they will start their review of that incident from start to finish. Once that's completed, and we anticipate it's definitely going to take a shorter time frame than the review of the 13 shooters in the pursuit case. That will be presented to my office in a written report. That report will be reviewed by myself, and then based on the recommendations and the outcome of that report, I'll either hear charges against those officers if charges are recommended, or I will refer that case to the director's office if I deem it necessary.
And what's the distinction from you making a determination in the director?
Well, the chief's office has latitude in discipline up to and including 10 days suspension without pay. The director's office has latitude for 10 days to 30 days suspension without pay, demotion and or termination. So if once this report is complete, once their thorough review is complete and forwarded to my office, I will have to make a determination based on that evidence and that review of whether or not that case stays with the chief's office or warrants referral to the director of public safety for review.
And the reason I had both of them talk to you about two different cases, so that you understand that we're concerned about due process, not just process. A lot of what you hear in regards to the public's discontent with these decisions is not just the incident itself and what they believe to be the egregiousness of the incident itself, but also the fact that they believe that the system just goes through a process with a predetermined conclusion as opposed to having due process that has at its core fairness and justice. So I just want to emphasize to you that we're doing this in a due process way, not just going through the motions of a process and already having at the end already determined what we're going to do. I want to be very clear on that. So Blaine, why don't you talk to them about our community engagement, and then I'll wrap it up and then I'll answer questions.
Sure, thank you. We've been working very hard on community engagement in the city of Cleveland. We've been working closely with street outreach workers, clergy, street and block club presidents, and other community stakeholders to do as much as we can to inform the community on the process that the city is taking in order to make sure we move in the right direction. We've also been working closely with these citizens to build a relationship and serve as a liaison with a lot of the protesters that are protesting and speaking out on this, in order to make sure that we help educate them that we respect and totally respect their right to speak out on this issue. But at the same time, we really work closely to try to prevent any, damage to personal property. So we've been really working closely with Clevelanders to define Cleveland, and that's what we basically doing through our community engagement strategy.
And again, it's so that, and the reason why we talk to people about the process and we're transparent and keep people up to date all the time as to how things are going on various cases is so that they completely understand that we are engaged in due process, just not a process, and that there are things that we have to do in order to ensure due process. And some of those things take time. We are not trying to prolong the time, particularly in the Tamir Rice case. We're not trying to prolong that, but we will take whatever time is necessary for us to do the right thing in terms of due process and having this done right. Finally, I'll say before we go to questions, I do want to emphasize that these are incidents, and these incidents are very tragic. And there's no mystery if you watch the news or if you are living in communities and hear people talk. These are very tragic incidents, but they are just that. They're one incident, and people focus on them. And I would want us to really consider these incidents in a context of what I believe is actually going on, not just in Cleveland, but I think across this country, and people are voicing their opinions about it, and they're very upset about it. and that is what they believe to be a lack of fairness, a lack of justice in the system, in the way in which it prosecutes or reviews these kind of incidents. And people are very upset about it, and I believe legitimately and rightfully so. And that is why we spend so much time in Cleveland emphasizing the fact that we're not just doing a process where we already have a predetermined outcome, and we're not trying to support an interest, whether it's the police interest or activist interest or whatever interest. We're really trying to do this in a due process way. So at the end of it, that we know and we believe that we have been fair and we have been just in how we've handled these incidents. That is what we're focused on. So we're available for questions from anybody, and everybody get their turn. I'm here as long as whatever, I'm here for the duration, so you don't have to get anxious. Yes, sir.
Mayor, it's Martin Savage.
Yes, yes.
In the hours now, 24 hours since this decision has been announced, what are you most concerned in the next 24 and 48?
Well, I'm concerned about us getting our process in place and moving expeditiously through our process in a way that people know that there's no time lapse between the grand jury's decision and what we're doing. There's not. That's why the chief is here. So we're concerned about getting that message out to people that whether they agree with the grand jury's decision or not, we're moving ahead with our process, and that our process will, again, not just be a process, but it will be one that has at its core due process as part of it.
Do you worry about the protests?
No, I don't worry about protests. People have a right. I mean, people have a right. It is America, and people have a right. They have a right to express themselves and express themselves as to whatever opinion that they have, whether they agree with me or don't agree with me. What they don't have a right to do is do violence to people or to property. That's what they don't have a right to do. But no, I'm not concerned about protests. We actually welcome it, and we provide police protection to them as when they come to Cleveland to protest. That's why what Blaine mentioned, he is constantly in contact with local people who are advocates, local people who have been demonstrators in the past, as to not telling them what to do or not to do, because they're not going to pay attention to that anyway. Is more about, look, here's where we are, here's what we're doing, being transparent with them and understanding what we believe are the parameters of the protest. But no, I'm not concerned about protesters. We actually welcome them to some degree. Yes. Right. I'll like it.
Yeah, what I mean, very, very cool.
Right.
What are you hearing?
Well, people are mad. But I'm not just hearing that in Cleveland. I'm hearing that all over the country. People are upset about the actual incident itself, whether it's here in Cleveland or in Chicago or in Ferguson or Baltimore. I can just go on and on. But the underlining anxiety and the underlining upset that they have is about what they believe and legitimately believe is a sense of lack of fairness and a lack of justice. And they just believe that, look, this is predetermined and that there's no, they're just going through the motion. That's what I'm hearing. And so you have the problem with whatever happens, a legitimate concern about the egregiousness of that, and then you have a expression of legitimate concern about the system and whether or not the system's fair, whether or not it's just, and they believe it not to be. That's what I'm hearing. Let me go back here. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Barbara Lowe, ABC News.
Yes, ma'am.
You just said here that people are legitimately mad and upset about perceived lack of fairness and justice. We talked about a process that some see as not a due process, they perhaps was predetermined.
Right, that's
So,
true.
so specifically, in terms of the prosecutor here, and the family, and many who believe that he rigged the system, their lawyers and their family have said he sabotaged the grand jury. Do you have any comment about that?
No, and I'll tell you why. It's because I'm focused on our process and ensuring that it has at its core due process. If I comment on that one way or another, it becomes distorted, and it taints what we do. So the county prosecutor and the grand jury have done whatever they've done, you know, and people have an opinion about that. We are now focused on what we're doing and ensuring that what we do has at its core due process. So that's where we are right now. So I do not have a comment on what the grand jury did or what the county prosecutor did. That's their world. Now it's in our world, and we're going to do what we believe is the right thing in terms of processing this. Yes, sir. I'll come back around.
Mike Tobin with Fox News Channel. Possibly this is a better question for the chief.
Right.
But as you mentioned, the people have a right to be mad.
Right.
How much pressure is bearing down on you and the chief to come down with something punitive against these officers to answer the angry
Well,
crowds?
this is the point I made to you. I'm not swaying one way or another. I got, you know, you have pressure from police and those who like police to do one thing. You have pressure from advocates and those who have a sense of injustice to do another thing. I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on due process. Wherever it goes. I think I've demonstrated, particularly the people, local people will tell you, I think we've demonstrated that I don't throw the police under the bus for political reasons, neither do I throw the public under the bus for political reasons. We're focused on doing this and doing it right. There's been a wrong done in the sense that whether it has been determined that there was no criminal wrong done. Now we'll determine whether or not there's been an administrative wrong done as we overlay this with our policies and procedures and protocol and all these and tactics and all that. And then we'll make a determination. And I will honestly say to you that the external pressure from any group, no matter what it is, will not be of consideration in our deliberation of this or our conclusion. It will not be.
But you're saying that a wrong has been done.
Something happened, whether it's administrative, criminally, someone has said, the grand jury has said that there's been nothing done wrong criminally. We are reviewing based on what we have seen, whether or not something has been done administratively. A 12-year-old lost his life. Something happened. A 12-year-old died. And in East Cleveland, 2 people died. So we're going to look, and we take that seriously. We do soul searching on these kind of things, and we take that seriously. And we're going to ensure that when we do this, we're going to do it right, with due process. And we're not going to have political consideration based on which group or my political well-being or the chief's political well-being. Chief, you want to add?
Mayor, I think you kind of answered that question. The facts are the facts. And if those facts bear out that there was wrongdoing on the part of the officers procedurally, policy-wise, then we'll take care of that. If those facts don't bear that out, then, it'll go that way. But the committee is put together to review the incident from start to finish and to take in consideration also grand jury testimony. We're going to request those records from the county. The sheriff did an investigation on this. We're going to request their investigation to make sure we're not missing anything. But all that in totality will determine if there was wrongdoing by these officers. And if it bears that out, then we will deal with that in a professional and a respectful and a fair way. And that's all the mayor is saying, and that's all we've done from day one.
I'll get you. Yes, ma'am.
Hillary Golston, WKYC.
Yes, ma'am.
You talked a lot about the process,
Right.
and something that Sue Trundra, the attorney for Smarter Rice, has said that there should be some separation between the prosecutor and the grand jury in this case, or in cases like this, where we have use of force, because the prosecutor is working day in and day out with the police. From your perspective, do you think that should happen in the future? Because Mara Rice, through her statement, said she feels that the system in Cuyahoga County is, quote, corrupt. So do you believe that there should be more separation when we have a use of force case in the future? Should we have a special prosecutor come?
Well, but again, I'm not going to deal with that in specifically. Let me deal with it in a broader sense. I think I'm very clear that the general public, and when I say general public, it used to be a time when it was just a group of people, whether they were poor people or minority people, or people who would be perceived as those who would be anti-police, that they felt that there was a sense of injustice to them. There was a sense of a lack of fairness with them. Now what you have a broader group of people who believe the same thing, and is more diverse. Diverse in terms of race, diverse in terms of ethnicity, in culture, in terms of income. It's more diverse. So you have a larger number of people now feeling that way. And as a result of our system not functioning in what I believe a due process way, you now have these suggestions coming forward. And they're suggesting, we have state legislators who are talking about eliminating the grand jury's investigation, or not the grand jury, but a county prosecutor's investigation when there's a police officer involved in the use of deadly force. And to have that go to the state, and have the state then appoint a special prosecutor. Well, all this is happening because people have no more faith and confidence in the system as a whole, and I think there's some legitimacy to that. There's some legitimacy to that.
How much legitimacy?
Well,
What do you think should happen?
Well, look, again, I'm staying focused on what I have to do and what we have to do, and I think that as you'll find enough people willing to comment on somebody's particular motive and stuff like that. I just don't do that, all right? But I will say to you that what you're expressing is what I believe you are having a larger number of people buy into, because they have lost confidence in the system. Look, can I say this, and forgive me for my long-windedness on this, but there are three major issues here that is causing, as we focus on the individual instances that things are happening, whether in Cleveland or throughout this country, as we focus on those, we miss the three major issues that are, three major things that are occurring. The first major thing is people just don't believe they have access. And they don't believe they have access to the beneficial side of the operation of our system. And again, that is not what it traditionally used to be, just minorities or poor people. It is a much larger group of people who are now feeling that they don't have access, or the system just doesn't function for them. It doesn't work for them. That's number one. The second thing is what we've been talking about, what I've been talking about, is that people have a legitimate concern about the lack of justice and the lack of fairness in the criminal justice system in particular. But the system in general, but the criminal justice system in particular. And the third thing is the people just believe that nobody cares about them. So you put all that together, and yes, you're going to have all of this social unrest going on, and yes, you're going to have people talking about, well, maybe we need to change the system in order to ensure that there is fairness, that there is justice. So that is what's going on, and I'm trying to point that out as we try to fit these individual cases into this broader thing that's happening, not only in Cleveland, but across this country. Yes, ma'am.
One question for you, if you don't mind, one question.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Mayor, you just said that people, sorry, I'm not saying that.
Yes.
You just said that people have legitimate concerns about the lack of fairness in the criminal
Correct.
justice system. Do you think that any of that lack of fairness has to do with racial bias?
I think that's part of it. There's some, when we're now in a consent decree with the Department of Justice, we actually welcome this, contrary to what people think. we actually welcomed it because we were doing incremental things for years, but those incremental things have no impact because they exist by themselves and they eventually get eroded and they go away. What the consent decree now gives us the ability is to do true reform in a holistic way, and to make things move as a whole rather than doing things incrementally. And we'll have the ability to do these reforms, and they will have substance, and they'll be sustainable over long periods of time, regardless of who the mayor or the chief is. Included in that, what we've agreed to is developing bias-free policing policy, reviewing those policies with police civilian review committee, reviewing that with the monitor. So of course, there are overlaying this thing is the whole context of race. We are in America, you know, we're not somewhere else. But I imagine in the Middle East, you have another context that you can overlay that on. That may not be, that bias may not be based on race. That bias may be based on something else, you see. But the point is, it does exist. But I'm also trying to express to you that there are more and more people who are included in that group who feels that there's been an injustice done to them, or there's been a lack of fairness in regards to them. There are more and more people, and that's just not race. It's just not race. And I'm trying to express that the people who are discontent around what I call the pattern and practice of constitutional violations are just not associated with race now. It's associated with a much broader group. Thus you have the kind of stuff you have now. But traditionally in America, race has been part of our fabric, and racism has been part of that, and there has been some unfairness just based on race, some injustice based on race. It's part of what happens. But you can go any part of the world and you can take that bias and just and it may not be race, it might be religion, it might be something else. It just exists. I'm just pointing out that in America, you're having a much broader group of people, more diverse people who are included in that group who are just unhappy. They're dissatisfied, they're disgruntled, and they're speaking out in some form or fashion.
So how confident are you that these steps are going to make a difference?
Say what?
How confident are you that these steps that you're talking about?
Well, look, I just do what I do, and I do the best I can do at what I do have some authority and control over. My thing is to keep our house in order and to keep our behavior in line as to what we do. That's why we welcome the consent decree. That's why we welcome this process to review incidents where police have been involved in use of force, particularly those that result in the deadly force. We don't want to have that, but if it is, we're not shying away from it, and we want to go at it in the right way. Yes, ma'am.
Well, Denise Sorrell from Cleveland 19.
Yeah.
Mayor, what's being done right now to keep your finger on the pulse of the protest that could be coming in the coming days? You know, we were told about a protest that's scheduled for 3 o'clock this afternoon that was said to be, expected to be, massive.
Right.
A word like that being used. Would you recommend also that people, is it safe for people to be in downtown?
Well, again, I'm not trying to cause panic, or neither I'm trying to incite a riot. What I am saying to you is when Blaine spoke to you, he talked about our constant community engagement, whether there's the thing that about Tamir Rice ruling or the East Cleveland shooting, the Brelow verdict. We just don't come together based on that one moment and try to deal with things. This is an ongoing thing with us. So we're in constant communication with people and people who are local people who demonstrate. Now, it is more difficult to deal with people who are not local people, people who are external to Cleveland. We don't have that kind of relationship with them. Now, are we prepared for things if they happen? Of course we are. It's a professional police department. I think we've demonstrated that in the past, whether it was the Brelow verdict or the initial instance when Tamir Rice was shot and there was a mass protest. I think we've demonstrated that we are prepared. Our first line of action is one that is one about protecting protesters, even when they put themselves in harm's way, whether they lay out on the freeway or agitate other people who may be contrary to them. We try to protect them. But at the same time, we do not allow people to do harm to other people or to property. So we're prepared. Are we concerned? We stay concerned all the time. I'm not trying to tell the people they should flee the city, or should, I'm not trying to do that. Because we're not trying to cause a panic or a riot. We're trying to do what we do, and I think we demonstrated that we do it quite well in what we do. You have any comments on that?
Just that the city is safe. I mean, as the mayor said, we prepare for this kind of thing all the time. It's not just when incidents happen. And we have partnerships throughout the region, both on the federal, state, local level, county level. And as Director Griffin stated, we have relationships with people in this community, a lot of relationships that we depend on to, keep their finger on the pulse of things and let us know what's going on, and to do some of that interaction themselves. It's not officers out there trying to interact and keep people calm. It's the community that comes together that does that as a whole. But the Division of Police, along with our partners here, we are prepared for any and everything that may happen. And we're, telling people to protest, do it peacefully, do it respectfully, and, we'll assist you in that manner.
Chief, before the Brelow verdict, you had made similar comments to the media. You had said that protecting protesters was of the utmost importance and ensuring the right to protest and using de-escalation techniques and keeping people calm. But then when the protesters showed up, it seemed law enforcement came out in riot gear from the start, which some might perceive as an aggressive posture toward the protesters. What is the approach this time?
Our posture from the beginning is always a less intrusive, less aggressive posture. Our officers are attired just the way I am today. In basic uniform, they're 8-point hat, no riot gear, no helmets, none of that stuff. If you remember from the Brelow verdict, you didn't see a Cleveland police officer in any attire other than the Class B uniform until late into the evening when things started to gravitate towards violence. There were some earlier incidents that happened, not involving the Cleveland Division of Police, where there were some officers that were in that type of gear because they felt they had to protect a particular location within the city. But there weren't Cleveland police officers attired like that until things started to get out of hand. And we stated from the beginning, we're going to protect people's First Amendment rights. We're going to assist you in getting all over the city. I mean, we had people go from downtown all the way to Cadell and back, and we assisted them in doing that. But once things start to get out of control, once there's violence, then we're going to stop that protest. It immediately becomes an unlawful assembly, and our officers are going to do what they need to do to keep people safe. And that's been our posture from day one.
Let me see. Yes, sir. And then
And this may be better. Yesterday, the prosecutor made a point to single out the dispatcher and mentioned that the fact that it could be a child, could be a toy gun, was not related. Should that information have been relayed to the officers? And what is the procedure on how information is relayed and what's decided they need to know?
Well, that's all part of the review for the Critical Incident Committee. I'm not going to comment right now on what the procedure should or shouldn't have been. The committee will determine what happened and what didn't happen. They'll review those dispatch tapes. They'll review the call logs. They'll review everything, again, from start to finish, from the first call that was made until Tamir Rice was taken to the hospital by EMS. They'll review everybody's involvement, from police officers to EMS technicians to firefighters, anybody that was on the scene. We're going to take a look at that start to finish, along with anything that was presented to the grand jury. And then once we look at all that evidence, the facts are going to be what they are, period. and then we'll make our recommendations either to myself or to the safety director, and we'll go from there.
Chief, what's the duty status of these officers currently?
Both officers are still and have been, since this incident happened, on restricted duty, meaning no public contact, no street duty. They're basically in an office doing paperwork, and they'll remain on that status until this is concluded.
And they're paid, they get their regular benefits and so forth.
Just their regular benefits, correct.
If they had been indicted, then that would have changed.
Right.
Chief, let me follow
Just
up
to
on something
remind,
that Denny
I'm
said
sorry,
just
just to
a
remind everybody, just mention your name and your affiliation so that we capture that.
Yes.
Prosecutor Denny yesterday mentioned a lot of key what he felt was key evidence. And among the things that he mentioned was that in his view, the police officer who responded at the time believed it was an active shooter situation. And because of that, it was his view that they responded appropriately in what Cleveland police tactics were. And they complied with that. What's your opinion?
Well, again, I'm not going to really comment a lot on what the prosecutor stated yesterday or what the grand jury's conclusions were, because we're going to conduct our own thorough, comprehensive investigation. The people on this committee know what Cleveland Police tactics and policies and procedures are, and that investigation will be based on our proper policies, tactics, and procedures. So I don't know what the prosecutor was using as a guide for that, so I can't comment on that.
He had mentioned your departments.
Right, but I don't know exactly what he looked at in coming to that conclusion, so I'm not going to comment, but we're going to do our thorough review to make sure our policies were followed. And if they weren't, then, you know, we'll start that due process and people will be held accountable.
So I know that Chief, you said you're not going to comment on this, but the question that the mayor was asking earlier was, Tamir Rice's family said that the decision of the grand jury not to indict two officers proves that the criminal justice system is corrupt, and they imply that racial bias was involved in this whole process. What do you think?
Well, I think the mayor answered that question. I mean, there's bias in, you know, in reporting. There's bias in the criminal justice system. There's bias in the post office. You know, whether that played a role in the decision, I don't know. You'll have to talk to the members of the grand jury and the prosecutor's office.
Do you think it plays a role in your police department?
Everybody has a bias, myself included.
And this critical incident committee that you're talking about, who's on it and how independent would it be?
We'll get you that list. We'll get you the list.
But it is an internal investigation, right?
Somewhat, yes.
So somebody looking from the outside might say, how independent can an internal investigation be?
Well, there are civilians on the critical incident review committee, and we'll get you the list and you can vet that list and talk to those people.
And that's why you, on your question around bias, that's why you have in place different things that if someone does have a bias, they do not act on that bias. If they do act and that act is based on a bias, then they are held accountable. That's part of the reform that we're going through with the Department of Justice. Yes, ma'am.
You touched on this just a little bit yesterday, but we haven't had a chance to hear from the Rice family yet directly,
Right.
but through their attorney. They said basically that when Samari Rice got the news of the non-indictment, she was uncontrollably. What are you saying today to the family?
Well, you know, I'm not going to use this to I'm trying to say this in the right way. I don't take these moments for anything other than what I'm here for. A 12-year-old lost his life. What can I say to a mother? You tell me what I'm going to say to a mother. I got a 13-year-old grandson who just turned 13-year-old. Same size. So what can I say? There's nothing that anybody in this room or I anything is sufficient enough to deal with the grief that a mother has for losing their child. And we're doing what we can to ensure that nothing like that happens again. It has nothing to do with about the rightness or wrongness of individuals, whether they're police or the child or the family. It has nothing to do with that. That's why I say a wrong has been done. Now, whether that wrong is legal or whether or not it is administrative, the fact is a 12-year-old has lost their life. It should not have happened. It should not have happened. It simply should not have happened. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, Denise Early from Cleveland 19. Is there a reason to wait until January to release the findings of that administrative review?
Well, the point is, I don't know what the findings are, is what I'm trying to say to you. What he is saying is that he has finished his administrative hearings with all 13 officers, and he is putting together a report to review with me. And then once he reviews that report with me, then he will give me what he believes is the proper recommendation for discipline. And then at that time, he and I will have a discussion along with the chief around what the recommendations are. Then we will talk to you in regards to it. So there's nothing to be released in terms of him making the final decision of what the discipline is. What he has done, he said he's finished all of the hearings with all the 13 officers. He's reviewed all their testimony, all the evidence, all the stuff that BCI did, the state attorney. He's reviewed all that, and now he's compiling his report, and he's putting that together in a presentation form that he will present to me first, along with his recommendations. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Along with his recommendations, and once he presents it to me, and along with his recommendations, then we will present it to the public and to the media. That's what he's saying. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
There's another case that we haven't talked too much about, T.H. Anderson. Just what is our general, where is that right now in the fight?
Well, as you know, one of the things that we've done is we've removed all uses of force to result in death to the county for them to investigate, so that we can kind of get rid of this notion that you're doing the internal investigation of yourself. So that went to the county sheriff. We did some initial things. We handed our files over to the county sheriff. The county sheriff has now handed that over to the prosecutor.
They're in the process.
Right, they're in the process of handing it to the prosecutor. The same thing will happen there. Once the criminal side is over with, then if there's an indictment or no indictment, whatever that winds up to be, then we will take it back internally and do an administrative review of that to see if they violated any administrative rules or general police orders, policies, and things like that. I don't know, what is their status? Restricted duty status. Right. Yes,
So
ma'am.
that investigation is complete? The county's investigation of the T.H. Anderson case is complete and being handed over to the prosecutor's office, is that?
It's my understanding they're somewhere in the process of it being complete or turning it over to the prosecutor. I don't know specifically, but I know they're close to ending that and giving it to the prosecutor.
And they've asked us for everything that we've had, and we've given it to them. Yes, ma'am.
Elizabeth Miller from Idea Street. Are you concerned about how the city is viewed nationally in light of all these cases?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in the fact that no one likes to be viewed in the negative sense. No, in the fact that I'm not going to have my own esteem determined by somebody else. So I'm not as, we know what we do, and why, that's why we spend so much time and energy to do it the right way, because we know internally that's what we do. And how we're interpreted externally is, yes and no. Nobody likes to be viewed negatively, but no, I'm not going to let that try to prove myself to anybody else or have Cleveland prove itself to anybody else. We don't have that kind of esteem issue. We know that we're on top of this, and our intent is to do the right thing and do it the right way. And I think that in and of itself will speak for Cleveland. To follow up on it, these are challenging moments in time. And as I tell my people all the time, it is not the challenge that matters. That's completely irrelevant. It's all about how you deal with it. And how you deal with it really defines who you are and who we are as a city. What is our personality and what is our character. And that's is why I don't get caught up in that external review of us, because we're defining who we are by how we deal with these things. And I believe as time goes on and people witness the way in which we do things, our reputation will be whatever it is. If our reputation is that we just go through a process for process sake, and then that's who will be considered. If our reputation is, they take their time, they're fair about this, there's a sense of they're trying to get it right, then that will be what it is. So I'm not trying to fabricate it, is what I'm trying to say. We're trying to really stay on this, and that's why I don't let all of that, kind of influences you say, what is the pressure point? Yeah, you say, well, what? No, I was saying it similar to what you asked. What are the pressure points? At the pressure point, well, you need to increase your esteem here. You need to increase your image. Well, I can't get diverted into that. I got to do my job. And I think in doing your job, you define yourself in that way. That's what I believe. Yes.
Marcus at CNN. Is the city planning to offer a settlement to the Rice family, or is the intention to fight this all the way?
Well, I take advice on that from my lawyers, so I can't answer that question specifically. But let me point out something to you. In this case with the Rice family, the grand jury has determined what is determined, and we have yet not settled, and we've not had a judgment against us. We're still in the process of the court. Whereas in the East Cleveland shooting, we had settled that case long before any indictments or anything. But that's determined by the attorneys. And they review that based on what they believe is the city's best interest or the strength of our case or the weakness of it and things like that.
What are they saying now?
Well, I'm not pressing them on it. I'm not pressing on it. When I do ask them about it, they tell me that it is in federal court, that they're at this stage of whether it's discovery or motions or answering this. That's what they tell me. They just give me the process. They haven't come to me and said, Mayor, we believe after reviewing all this that we should settle or we should take it to trial. They haven't said that. But when I do ask them, they tell me where they are in that process. They haven't given me a recommendation yet.
Couldn't you tell them?
I could, but I don't. Just like I could tell them what to do in regards to this in terms of what the outcome should be on these administrative sides, but I don't. If I did, I would be just like what I'm saying should not be. A process with a predetermined conclusion and doing politics to ingratiate myself to somebody rather than doing the right thing. So no, I don't. I could, but I'm not. Anybody else? I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.